All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the building committee meeting tonight. I'm going to call it to order 6:31, and I'm going to hand it over to Design Lab.
Great, thank you, Tina. If you wouldn't mind, please enable screen sharing so we can.
I thought I did.
You should be
Yeah,
able
it says
to.
co-host.
Okay.
Oh,
Yep.
no. Yeah, you should be able to.
Yep. There you go.
Just give me a second here. Right. How does that look for you guys? Can you see it?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, good evening, everybody. Same crew here from Design Lab. Andrew Brooks, Audrey, and myself, Ben. It's good to be back. It's been about a month since we met with you all. So we've got some updates to share with you as we continue to move the renovation and addition project along. So we'll quickly go over what we've been up to for the past month or so, then share with you our recommended approach to revised plans. We'll go through an exterior update, a landscape update, and then look at the next steps ahead of us over the next several weeks as we work to get the project rebid. So we met with you back at the beginning of January. It's been about a month. We've had a couple important meetings since then, one with the library staff back on January 24th, and another important meeting last Wednesday, a week ago, with two cost estimators, one who has been part of the project from the beginning, and a second cost estimator who has been hired to help provide some perspective on where we're at and what's transpired with the previous bids. And then here we are on Wednesday, the 7th. We intend to, after we get through this presentation with you all and go present to you our sort of recommended path, we intend to dive right into a redocumentation effort and coordination effort with our consultants. It's an accelerated process to get us ready to go back out to bid on March 22nd. So it's just 6 weeks away, and it is our hope to get out to the market, as we've been saying, as soon as we can. We'll go over this again at the end, but we do intend to meet again with you before we go back to bid. Right now, we're targeting Wednesday, March 13th. And that will be after we get an updated estimate from the two cost estimators that we met with last week, so that we can share that update with you. So in terms of where we're at, we're going to provide a bit of context of course, the previous design. You all will remember these floor plans. This is what was bid last fall. And as we all know, did not come back favorably and was considerably over our construction budget target. So these are here just for context and reference if we need them. This bidding summary we went over at our last meeting too, but it's just sort of reminding everybody about what transpired and really the biggest factors that drove the cost higher than what was expected. The last time we met back in early January, we had a whole slew of strategies that we were considering on how to redesign the building and get it to a budget that met what we were expecting. So we'll go through all of this here more in a moment as we walk you through our revised plans. But suffice it to say, we've really tried to, with our cost estimators input, incorporate many, if not all of these items to try to get the scope of the project and cost of the project more on target. We did evaluate a whole series of options. We had discussed some of these with you last meeting. And we shared all of these with our cost estimators that we met with last week and went through the sort of pros and cons of each. And ultimately, with the library's input, sort of understood some of the programmatic adjustments that would need to be made for each scheme. But to cut to the chase, after we spoke with our cost estimator, we have dialed in on what we were calling option 1C for a number of reasons. To get the project on target from a cost perspective, with our cost estimate, we thought it was prudent to be as frankly aggressive as we could with reducing overall square footage and making a simpler volume and footprint of the addition. It's a tricky thing because even though we're reducing square footage, that sort of exacerbates the economy of scale issue that we're facing with this project. But it was our cost estimator's recommendation to move forward with this scheme. There are a couple, programmatic shifts that are a result of the reduced square footage. And like we mentioned last time, the most significant is not having a dedicated community room within the addition footprint. But we've been able to accommodate that need by rethinking one of the spaces in the existing building that we'll share here in a moment. So, big picture, while the addition has gotten smaller in size, we are able to accommodate the vast majority of the types of program spaces that we had in the previous design. We've just been thinking about them differently and thinking about the location of the community space and how that might wear two hats to serve different types of programs, either adult programs or children programs, is sort of the biggest adjustment. As a result of that program moving into one of the existing spaces in the upper level of the library, the existing library, which you'll see here in a moment, that sort of reduces the amount of general reading space, but we have accommodated general reading space in the Whitney room. The other big sort of spatial change that we made, and we sort of planted this seed last time, is that we've eliminated the ramp between the new lower level and the existing lower level so we could gain that square footage back. So, I mentioned obviously the footprint has gotten smaller than where we were. But looking at the usable square footage of programmable space in this proposed design that we're about to go through, it does still yield an increase of usable square footage from the current library. And I think that's important to keep in mind. But that's really not the only thing we should be thinking about is just the square footage. We should be thinking about all of these other program improvements that reconfiguring the library is going to allow us to achieve. So we've got them sort of listed here, but it's important to go through them. We will have dedicated spaces for a flexibly used community room. We will have a dedicated children's room. We will have a dedicated teen space, a dedicated small meeting room, and a dedicated staff break room. All self-contained, acoustically separated spaces designed to serve the function that they're intended, their primary function that they're intended to serve, which does not exist in the library now. And having those spaces and others acoustically separated is another huge improvement that will be made because, as we all know, there's a lot of acoustic bleed and acoustic separation issues in the current layout that compromises a lot of the program use. We're also right-sizing spaces and locating them within the building with appropriate adjacencies to other program uses. And just generally, we're have a much more efficient layout and use of space. We talked about this a lot in the early stages of the last design, but the current addition, the 1970s edition, as we call it, it's a very odd geometry. It creates a lot of difficult spaces to use. It has an odd connection to the upper level with that sort of open balcony condition. So we're able to address all of that through this project. We're also going to be creating still a much more equitable library. It'll be fully accessible with a new elevator and accessible entries to the building and an accessible landscape. The new addition will have a much more welcoming and inviting lobby space than what's currently there. We're still going to be restoring the historic entry within the existing building, and we're going to be providing a variety of environments to serve different users and library patrons. The building will be completely modernized as it was in the last design with new MEP systems, a new sprinkler system. We're still going to have a fully electric building, and we will have a compliant building envelope within the addition that meets the recently adopted specialized energy code, and a restored building envelope in the existing building to address all of the leaks and deferred maintenance issues. We'll still have an improved site and landscape with new types of landscape spaces and plantings to accommodate different outdoor uses. We'll still have that sort of implied connection across the road to Town Common. We'll have dedicated parking spaces that are properly sized and accessible parking spaces, and we'll have a new stormwater management system. So all of the improvements that we were making in the previous design, we're still achieving. We're just thinking about the program and how spaces are arranged and sort of serving more than one purpose in a new way. Audrey is going to sort of talk through the revised arrangement of space, and then Andrew will talk you through the sort of exterior approach as well as landscape, and then we'll conclude for any questions.
It's a lot easier to see some of these changes in plan. One of the big shifts that we've made was reorienting the entrance to the addition. So it's now on the south facing wall. And that starts to play with the turret, which is a lot easier to see when we get to the exterior. And then by getting rid of the ramp, we're really able to consolidate our vertical circulation and use up that space that we had that the ramp was taking up. We also moved the break room and the library director's office down to the lower level to provide a bit of a sight line to the collection space in the teen lounge, which teen lounge is still in the same area. It's a little bit smaller, and we've moved one of the small meeting spaces to be right alongside of it. We did reduce it so that there is only one small meeting space, but we do have the ability to add like a furniture piece, a hush booth, phone booth type of thing. And then on the upper level, so as Ben mentioned, the quiet reading has moved into the Whitney room, which with that like existing fireplace there, it'll be a nice cozy space. And I think some of the biggest changes up here is that the children's space has really broken down into multiple spaces. It's no longer in one enclosed area. So we've got all of the children's collection together, along with a desk for the children's library in there. And then the computers start to bleed out into like that circulation area, which is nice and close to the nook in the turret, which makes for a really nice children's reading area. But then the biggest change is this program room that we have. It used to be the quiet reading, but now we're using this as more of a flexible room. And so that combines like the children's program and what we had as the flexible meeting space. And so we're really intending this room to be as flexible as possible so that it can accommodate a whole variety of different groups and gatherings and meetings, with a bit of storage along the edges and still ability to have different presentations and lectures.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it and Audrey just kind of outlined it, but this is the sort of biggest programmatic adjustment from our previous schemes where previously, the children's room had its own little program area for sort of arts and crafts type activities. And there was the dedicated community room on the lower level of the addition. What we've done in this scheme is we've combined those program needs into one space. And then it really becomes sort of a furniture selection process where we are equipping this room with the right types of furniture to serve different uses. So if there is a children's program that is an arts and craft activity, that can happen here. If there is an adult program that needs tables, that can accommodate here, or a sort of lecture type presentation can be accommodated here. So, we've got some work to do in this space to kind of figure out all of that nuance, but we're confident that we can do it. And it's really not an uncommon solution to achieving these programmatic needs in one space. It could be a program for children during the day, and that evening it could be arranged to support a poetry reading or some other type of adult program.
At the exterior, we took a similar approach to the composition and how to maintain what we've already worked on together and built together. So this is the old exterior from the bid set. You can see the 3 red dashed lines. Those are the 3 options that we had previously discussed. And we are leaning towards the OP1C line. So the massing is obviously being reduced by quite a bit. It's in this image, it's roughly half, but there is 3 dimensions to this. Of some other things that are being reduced or removed is we're reconsidering the cap as something smaller and less significant. It will be more of a parapet wall. The dormers on the left side, which were juxtaposing the turret, will be removed since there will not be a cap for them to interfere with. The right sides with the volume extension in the back will be now behind this elevation, so it will no longer be there. And then the masonry will be simplified and adjusted accordingly to still work with the size of the massing. So this is the new massing. There is a flatter top, but the top will be a bit more exaggerated than it's shown in this diagram. This is just to show the adjustments. There will still be a vertical relationship to the turret, but we're moving that turret motif to the right side of this diagram, which works better with the entrance and the change in the elevation entrance. We're still considering a base to contrast the large base on the building, and we still have a gasket. We still have vertical windows to work with the rhythm of the existing building as well. Outside of the massing of the building, we're still keeping the same composition of masonry and composite siding and detail in the masonry, but reduced detail. And landscape-wise, it's still a very similar composition and materiality as well, with crushed stone and stacked stone. One, probably the biggest adjustment to this slide is there is significantly less slate. The only slate on the project will be on the existing building. So these are renderings of the elevations. The top rendering is the same as that massing diagram that we just looked at. So you can see that the entrance has moved to that south elevation, and you can see how the turret motif is more representative in that new south elevation. We are quite happy with that adjustment, and it works well with that change. And we still have that verticality represented on the west elevation, but it's more subtle, and the detailing is simpler. And then the east elevation, the change has mostly just been a reduction in size. The materiality is similar. We did reduce the window size and counts, but that is mostly due to the programming inside. The programs on those windows now, on that side, is storage. And what does need windows, like the children's space, does have that light coming in. And again, there have been similar adjustments to the landscape, but they do work well and have been designed with the new massing and the new floor plan. So from the left side, we are removing the parking spaces from the upper side of the hill. We've also simplified the walkway. That walkway used to be more of a zigzag that met with the stairs, but we are able to take advantage of the slope of the sidewalk in order to have an accessible walkway. So that's a significant reduction in hardscape. We're also narrowing the historic staircase in order to reduce the hardscape even further. And then the right side has been changed, not dramatically, but there has been more reduction in the hardscape, but we're still able to maintain programmable space outside of the entrance on both sides of the entrance. And we still have a small wall that will be retaining less, which is also a valuable reduction. And we still have a small ramp up required because of the grading, and the same amount of parking on the entrance side. So with all of these changes also comes with a below grade reduction. So there's fewer drainage systems. There's more permeable area with all of the lawn and trees and shrubs. So that is probably the more major reduction here that can't be as visible in a diagram, but it is very helpful for the design and the cost.
So looking ahead, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are intending to shift gears here very quickly and dive into a redocumentation effort to update our bid documents with this design. We're anticipating an approximately 6-week process to do that. We are just 2 weeks from this Friday sending an estimate set to our estimators so that they can put eyes on it and provide an updated estimate on March 5th. We will then have a meeting on March 7th with our estimators, and we'll be back in front of all of you to present that update on March 13th with the intention of publishing the project to rebid it on Friday, March 22nd. So to wrap up, based on the conversation that we had last week with the 2 estimators, we anticipate that the updated estimate that we'll get later this month / early March to be between 7.6 and 8.2 million. If that estimate and therefore the corresponding bids actually come back less than the allocated $8.4 million construction budget, there are strategies that we've been thinking about of scope and items that we could build back into the project if the numbers work out favorably in that way. So some initial ideas on screen: we could introduce more stone and brick on the south facade. We could reconsider the roof form to be more asymmetrical like the previous design. We could put that towards different, higher tier furniture and shelving, or additional equipment and AV for the library. And also there's plenty of landscape components that we could reintroduce into the project should that door open for us. So it's our intent to make these revisions, based on these updated plans. And then, rebid the project, and based on the feedback that we've gotten from our estimators, this is the anticipated cost. So that's the end of our presentation. We're happy to bounce back to any content that may be useful. Tina, if you want to facilitate questions, we're happy to answer.
I will be opening this up to the building committees in the Building Committee 2.0 and Exterior Design Committee for discussion. I won't be opening it up to the public for any comments at this point. So I see Lisa's hand is up.
I have a couple of questions that I hope to go through quickly. With the redesign of keeping all the desired program spaces, but making everything smaller, it would be great to see a couple shots of the interior to get the sense. I'm concerned that there's going to be a lot of small rooms and it's going to feel a little bit chunky inside rather than feeling more open as we had hoped. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit more on the second floor than the first floor.
Sure. So our intention is for, at our next meeting is to have some interior vignettes and an updated exterior rendering so
Okay.
that we can share those with everybody. Your intuition, Lisa, is not, it's not necessarily wrong. I mean, spaces have gotten smaller, and the spaces in between those spaces have gotten have gotten a little smaller. We are expecting a nice arrival sequence. We don't have a double height space like we had in the previous scheme, but we have increased our ceiling height a little bit. And the nature of that lobby as it relates to the stair will be very similar to the previous design. The stair will still create a sense of verticality to that second floor. It will still have the same relationship to the sort of historic brick up against the existing building. So that sort of quality of space will be similar. On the upstairs, this won't feel unlike the historic space now. We are proposing, obviously the new entrance actually becomes an entry point into the building, and then we're proposing, acoustic sort of glass doors in between that historic lobby space that we've labeled and those adjacent reading spaces and program rooms. So there will be walls there, but they're going to be glass and, let view and borrowed light through them. And then this moment, here, as you get off the elevator, you'll have obviously a visual connection to the stairs. You'll be able to see downstairs. That will sort of be an orienting space before you go either into the existing building or into the children's collection.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I see where you're trying to go. I like the idea of the glass walls and look forward to the illustrations, the 3D illustrations. Can you say a little bit about what the estimators are telling you, both about what may have changed in costs and who might bid on the job this time around?
Sure. So I guess to answer the second part of your question first, I think, Matt, chime in here if I have this incorrect, but I believe we're intending to have the same invited GCs bid on the project that did in the last round. In terms of the file, they were all sort of pre-vetted and pre-approved. I think 10 or 12, 10. So we're going to answer the first part of your question. I think we all on the design team and the OPM are going to be reaching out to all of those GCs, directly telling them that this project will be hitting the street, so to speak, again, and trying to be as proactive as we can to get them to rebid the project. And then similarly, on the filed sub bids side of things, we intend to do the same, to reach out to as many bidders as we can once we get a little bit closer to the bid date, to try to drum up as much interest as possible.
Okay, and one last question. What do all these changes mean relative to the fire suppression system? Has any change happened in that situation?
That's a really good question, and I sort of perhaps went past it a little too quickly. We had a lot of conversation with our cost estimators about that last week and our engineering team. Ultimately, we did explore the potential to find an alternative compliance path through the building code and the fire protection code to not have a sprinkler building. But ultimately, it's our professional opinion and recommendation and our engineering team that, the building code is pretty clear that new buildings should be sprinklered and should have a fire protection system in them. So that's our position on that, but then we did reevaluate the mist system versus the cistern system. And ultimately with our cost estimators input, have landed on continuing with the mist system. But that goes to my previous point of drumming up much more bidder interest on the project and making our specification clearer, so that we get better bid numbers for that system.
Great, thank you very much.
Kat, you're up.
Awesome, thank you. I have a bunch of things, but so you just answered my question about the fire suppressing. I have to say, like, overall, I'm pretty disappointed with what's coming back. Like, I knew that this was probably going to happen, but I feel like the drasticness of these cuts is making it so the taxpayers paying over $20,000 a square foot for the addition. And I cannot wrap my mind around that being appealing to anyone. I know that we're doing the renovations to bring the building up to where it needs to be. I guess I have a couple of different questions. If you left everything as it was and brought everything up to code, do you have a cost for that? Because I know that's going to be asked, especially with this, huge decrease in square foot. So that is, I guess, my first question. And then I've got a bunch of other follow-ups.
When you say leave everything as is and bring it up to code, you mean the existing configuration?
Correct. Exactly. Like if you didn't touch anything in terms of exterior, or, I guess if you did minor exterior, renovations, and you just brought, you made it so that the wall isn't leaking anymore, and you reconfigured things. If you did just basically completely gutted everything in the inside of the building, fix the building envelope, like what is that in terms of like the price? Because that is, again, you're going to have a bigger building than what we're going to end up with after we pay $8.2 million.
Right. So we have that number from 3 years ago when we evaluated it conceptually. We don't have it in today's numbers. I think it's a very fair question when you look at it from a square footage perspective, but we have to remember that 70s edition, it's not suitable to be modernized in every way that you just described. Like we still have to get an elevator in, we still have to make an elevator pit, we still have to update the building structure laterally to support that. The second floor can't support book stacks. I mean, there's a whole litany of issues with that building that it's not that simple to think about it just from a square footage perspective. We still need to get new restrooms. We still need to put a modernized HVAC system in it. So I don't have a direct answer to your question, Kat, in terms of a dollars perspective, but it's not an insignificant upgrade. And then you have to consider how it's configured spatially and how you can make use of that space. So I know that doesn't answer every part of your question, but
Right.
Going back in time to our early conceptual analysis where we did evaluate that, and we evaluated building a second level on top of it, and then we evaluated, demolishing the addition or the 70s building to build new. I understand that the cost and the price tag is higher than what we were anticipating at the time, But I think much of the logic that led us to the decision to build new still has a lot of merit.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I just think, if we're evaluating all of the, all of these different solutions, I think one of the things we do need to evaluate is an interior and building envelope. But anyways, okay.
Can I add a few comments to that, Kat, before you go
Yeah.
on to the rest of your questions? I'll be honest, I don't understand that logic. I mean, I appreciate you asking, but if 3/4 of our budget is just to bring the building up to code and what we need to do with the elevator and ADA and fix the myriad of problems that we've been having over the last 10 years, why wouldn't we take the extra couple $1 million and give the library the programmatic space they need, make it so that staff have space, and I think people are focusing on the gross square footage, when that's really not true, because half of the 70s edition is not usable currently. So to say it's a smaller building, yes, but you are getting more space than what we have. And, I know I'm talking to a whole bunch of library people here, but in reality is collections are going to be decreasing over the years. I mean, people are going to more electronic formats, you're going to online. So I really, from the beginning, the library staff have said, we don't need this gigantic building. We need space. We need program space. We need workrooms. We need a break room. We need children's space. So if we're paying $6 million to bring it up to code, again, why wouldn't we pay $2.5 million more to get all this other stuff that they just turned to the slide? It will be 1,000,000 times better than what we have today. We cannot move staff back in that building as it stands. And it's just unhealthy. It's an unhealthy building. And quite frankly, it's not fair to the staff or the patrons to keep using that 70s edition that's just not functionable.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that at all. I was just saying, what is the cost to make it usable? I just want to make sure that has been answered, because you're throwing out numbers 6.5 versus 8, but it could be like 2 or 3 million versus 8. So I just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in terms of the cost economics of this, and if making that 70s edition usable, like, is that a $3 million project? That is what I'm curious about, given the fact that adding 400 square feet is going to be $8.2 million. Again, that's over $20,000 a square foot to make 400 more square feet of usable space. I'm just saying that that's astronomical. That's all I'm saying. I'm supporting the project, and I have since day one, and I've got a lot of skin in the game, but I'm just saying I really want to make sure that we're looking at this like very critically.
No, and I completely agree, but it's not, you can't just say it's, to add 400 square feet, because 90% of the work needs to be done in the historical building.
Very true.
So, and I don't remember the exact numbers, and Ben, you may have it more readily available, but it was multi-million dollars just to bring it up to code when we started this project 3.5 years ago. And I can only imagine what that has escalated to over the years. So it's not like $1 million brings us up to code and then we're still talking, it would be more than half of our budget, I assume, based on where we were, just to bring it up to code.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be able to modernize what's there for less than $500 or $600 a square foot with all of what needs to happen. And that's a $5-6 million project. That doesn't include any site improvements. So I hear you, Kat, and I know it's challenging thinking about the level of capital investment that's required to gain, from a square footage perspective. But I really want everybody to really think not so quantitatively about this project and think about all of the other qualitative improvements that are going to be made. And I mean, that's why I went back to the screen, and these are like the big things, but like there's a lot of improvements that are going to happen to make this building much more usable and welcoming and modernized for the next several decades and generations of people in town. And I don't want to say it's a Band-Aid approach to fix the 70s building, but that building is fraught with issues, and it isn't as holistic as what this, a new building would require or would provide.
Okay. And then again, because I'm such a quantitative person, did you get a price? Like, could you share with us any of the information about, like, you presented to us like 1A, 1B, 1B, 2A, whatever, all of those different designs. Did you get estimates for those?
We
In
got
terms,
an estimate for, so I mean, it was last week was a couple hour long sort of workshop session where we went over all of these options with our estimators and all of the site stuff. I mean, there was a lot more to the conversation than what you see on screen here. But they ultimately, guided us to 1C because, I mean, it's 600 or 700 square feet less than square footage less than the other options 1A or 1B. And their guidance to us was, you don't get the same amount of dollars back for every square foot that you reduce. But they implored us to pursue an option with the most square footage reduced. They did not think that the options 1A or 1B that reduced the gross square footage by 11 or 1,200 square feet were going to get us to where we needed to. And the town's been very clear to us that 8.4 is the number. So we recommend going with option 1C. It does reduce the square footage the most, but we think it's our best path to get us to that $8.4 million. And should we be fortunate enough where bids come in lower, we think there's opportunities from site improvements and AV and equipment within the building to, build some stuff back.
what did they give you a cost different, like for the 2A, like, so if you're saving $1 million on the fire suppressant, or let's say $500,000 on fire suppressant, like, did they give you a cost for that?
I mean, just in conversation that if, you would reduce the amount of cost for fire protection, but because you're adding back envelope, and that may be hard to see there, but it is an increase of envelope. Not a lot, but they didn't see that as a path forward. And then the other key piece of that was what I said earlier is that, our fire protection engineers who, are obviously licensed engineers in the state of Massachusetts and many other states, it is their professional opinion that this building needs to be sprinklered. There could be, and that's a big could be, a compliance path forward to have a non-sprinkler building, but there's a long process behind that time-wise, and what comes out at the end is not certain. And it's not something our fire protection engineers would stand behind. Their professional opinion, and we went back and forth on this a lot over the past month, but their professional position is that this building should be sprinklered, and they would not stand behind a design that does not have a fire protection system in it.
Okay. And then my other question, because I know I brought it up last time, did you take a look at what the cost of just simplifying the exterior of the building to just one, like keeping it to just one entrance, where your entrance is either the historical or a new addition, like simplifying it so that you have just one entrance? Like, did we figure out what that savings would be?
Not specifically. We don't have a specific dollar value. I mean, I think we did that in the previous design process that we could dig up, but.
I mean, again, I'm really frustrated. So I'm going to say it here so that it's on record. I am frustrated with this. I would like a specific number for the cost. Like, I want to know how much is landscaping. Like, you just went to a cost estimator. Tell us how much the landscaping is. There's no, like, tell us some of the data. Like, I know
that data. I mean, we have a full estimate that backs up the 7.6.
So let's see it. I would like to see it as a building committee member. I would like to see the numbers, because I want to see where these cuts are. Like I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed with the design. I'm disappointed with the size and the scale and cost. I wish that there were other options. So I would like to just see the information that was provided to you guys and how you made those decisions. And I just want to be able to provide some input. And I've said these same things over and over, so that, like, the next meeting, maybe we can bring it up. Like, I'm just concerned. Again, You're telling me the community room is going to be the exact same community room we have now. And yet we already have that there. We use it for children's programming and for adult programming and this, that, and the other. And that's all fine and good, but don't sell it as something new. It's already there. I'm frustrated. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be, but I am. I feel like I'm speaking for a lot of the town right now. I read a lot of their feedback. I've read a lot of the letters in the mail, in the newspaper, and I'm just frustrated. And I just want to make sure that we are presenting as much factual information as possible. So please present it to us. Please pull up some spreadsheets with some cost estimation. I thought that's what we would be viewing tonight, not just a, hey, this is the decision we came down based on what the cost estimators presented. Please show me that information if you have it.
We have an updated cost estimate for this option that we will happily share, and we can go through it line by line, Kat. That's not something that we're purposefully withholding. But the reality is that if we want to get to a project that hits the 8.4, we have to take some drastic measures. And I share your frustration.
Yeah, it's just super frustrating. And like I said, I would just love to be able to look at what the things are cost by cost, because I think that there are things that you can add later down the road. Like we as a town could decide 10 years from now that we want to add that second entrance. We want to do that exterior landscaping projects. We want to add a ramp. Like those things can change down the road, but we cannot change. We can change the shelving. We can change this, that, and the other. We can add, like you're saying, once we come out to bid, if it comes lower, we can change some things, but you're not allowed to change the square footage in the building envelope once it's there. Like once that's gone to bid, you've told us that we can't change anything in terms of the design. So I just want to make sure the design that we're getting, even if it's bare bones, is the best that we can do. Like we really need to make it the best that we can do. And I feel like what's been presented tonight is our old building with a tiny little box attached. And I'm just disappointed. That's all. I just wish we could do better for the town.
We understand the frustration. It hasn't been an easy process or a straightforward process, and the bidding market really presented some major challenges to us. Our concern is that if we went with an option with a lesser reduced square footage, if that makes sense, if we went with a 1A or a 1B, and then it went out to bid and it again came back higher than the 8.4 million that has been allocated to the construction of this project, that the project would die altogether. That's the risk, and we can't control the bid market. We can come up with our best estimates, and we now have 3 estimators who have told us that this is an $8.4 to a $9 million project if bidder interest is there. But there's not a lot of interest, and we can't control that. And that is immensely frustrating. And we don't have insight to bidders' numbers. That's the reality of a publicly procured project in the state of Massachusetts. Like we can't say to a bidder, like, where are all your costs and could we do X versus Y? That's not how this process works, unfortunately. It's not like building an addition on your house where you can have those conversations with somebody. And our concern is, like I said, is that if we don't take enough off now and it comes back higher than the 8.4 again, then the project will completely die. And that's I think the biggest risk.
Okay, I let other people talk. Sorry, I don't mean to derail. I'm just frustrated.
Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I came in late, so if you covered this, I apologize. And this is a small thing, but I'm just wondering, given that there's such a tight space now, why are there 2 circulation desks?
It's really, Richard, to be able to monitor both entrances to the building. I think that's something that we could evaluate further with Tina and her staff, but that's the primary difference. Right now there's a single entry point in and out of the library, and in the revised design there are 2.
Okay, thank you.
Sunny, go ahead.
Yeah, so I have just a few questions that I've been pondering over. I'm not so concerned about the square footage itself because I think when we're talking about the way that the building is now versus what we will be getting with a design like this design or a similar design, is that the usable square footage will be more in the end. And I think that the updates do need to happen. And I think it would be difficult to update the 70s edition in that way. So I don't really have too much of a concern about the actual square footage, but given the reduced footprint of the building, I was wondering if there could be a more flexible option, potentially, like especially upstairs. Maybe between the program room and the quiet reading area, just to kind of leave open more possibilities for flexible space, because I think if we are going to go down the road of less square footage overall to this extent, that more flexibility in spaces might actually be to the library's best advantage, since you can't easily add on in the future. So I guess I was just wondering if there was a potential for that at some point, or like potentially a design that, I don't know, that might make sense for more flexible space.
And are you suggesting, Sunny, that might mean not having built-ins on the wall of these rooms, or a door in between them, or?
I mean, I anything like that. I mean, I don't design things and I don't have a background in any of that. So I would say just whatever professionally you guys could come up with. But I just think flexibility overall, when you have a reduced space like this, might be beneficial in terms of thinking 10 years or 20 years down the road, just in those terms. So I didn't know if you guys had any ideas or anything that you could potentially work on as far as like just a flexibility in space.
Yeah, I think, no, it's a good point. And I think as I was alluding to, thinking about the way we accommodate storage in the space, and maybe less built-ins and more, furniture solutions that could be reconfigured in 5 years for a different type of use is a good thought process. And I hinted at it before, but when we talked about this room, thinking about the types of furniture, either tables or chairs or storage, and thinking about it in a way that it could be reconfigured is the goal of the space. And I think carrying that thinking into the Whitney room is a good idea. So we'll evaluate that further with Tina and her team.
Go ahead, Sunny.
Sorry, I didn't realize if I muted, it wouldn't let me unmute again. I just have a few more shorter questions. I know that natural lighting is a concern, like in the existing building. I just was wondering if with this current setup, there weren't as many windows on the back side of the building, but I don't know if that's really that impactful. But I did notice there were quite a few windows, but do you think that'll be ample natural lighting with the way that the building is positioned currently and with everything that you've added to this design?
We do. Comparing to the previous design, there's less sort of public space along the, kind of back of the building. As you can see on this floor, it's, mechanical space for the elevator and storage. But we have added a lot of windows to the perimeter of the children's space. And we are, thinking about this sort of, large sort of reading nook opening that would sort of open up to the town common. So we do think there's ample natural light into the new spaces. Yes.
And we're also still holding the new windows in the Whitney room. So that room will be significantly lighter than it is right now. It is currently a very dark space, and we're planning on back to the plan. we're planning on installing 3 windows where there were originally windows. And so that should bring in that northern light, so it'll be a bit more ambient, but will be significantly lighter and nicer in there.
Okay, great. The last thing that I was wondering was, do you have any idea how much square footage will be on the largest like outside programming space? So like the largest kind of patio area? Do you have about any idea how big that's going to be? Because I feel like if we are losing some square footage, like essentially if there's still a potential to have outdoor programming in the warmer months, that might kind of help us, like I said, in the future and things like that. So that's another question I kind of had.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we are still intending with our landscape collaborators to create pockets of outdoor spaces that can be used for, children's story time or whatever other type of program that is suited to spill outdoors. So each of these is probably, 200 square feet, maybe a little more. But like we're working on that with our landscape team. But it's absolutely our goal to create spaces outside that can be used for, for program use, or just as an informal outdoor reading space.
Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you.
Lisa, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to switch horses just a little bit with one question about the grant that came in. Can you talk about how that applies against all of these costs? Does it reduce the budget? Does it give us in effect an extra $500,000 to work with on this project, or was that always factored in?
So based on what we presented to town meeting, that comes off the top. So that is part of the overall budget. This is just offsetting what either comes out of my budget or what comes out of the taxpayer's pocket.
Anyone else have any comments? Lisa?
Yeah, I understand and hear everybody's frustration, and I think that for the people that live in this town, it's a learning opportunity to understand what happens when you neglect the care of municipal buildings. These were conscious decisions that were made over time by lots of people who were leading the town, and that chicken has come home to roost. And I think that it's really unfortunate that part of this process involves just getting the building where it needs to be. But the town also does not need a giant library. And I know, I'm not even saying giant, a large library. Tina and her team do a fabulous job with what they have, and they don't have much. And I think to give them a slightly enlarged space that's designed more efficiently, that's clean and safe, does not need to be big. We just have to bear the burden of taking care of a building that's been ignored for too long, particularly when people want to keep the historic building. And to short sell the long time life of the library by just fixing it in a way that keeps it sort of intact as it is, I think is really short-sighted for what will probably be a 40-year opportunity to look at this the next time.
Thank you. Pat?
Yeah, I don't want it to seem like I was like supporting that. I just want to make sure that we're like crossing our I's and dotting our T's in terms of that, just because I think, again, that's a question that has been floated around town a lot. So I just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence. That's all I meant. And I do want to see this renovation go forward. But again, I just feel like from a building committee member perspective, I feel like I need more data coming at me in terms of like what these different options are going to cost. So like, I just want to know, like, well, we estimate that landscaping is going to be $2 million and we estimate that the elevator is going to be $500,000. Like, I just would, like, I know we saw that at a certain point in the process, and I just was hoping that we could see that again before like the decision has been made in terms of what we're going to go out to rebid, because we as like town members and constituents may have a different opinion than like the design architects on that. That's all I was saying. Like, again, like having 2 entrances, I know I keep harping on this, but like if that is $1 million and we have to staff 2 doors and we have to like have space for 2 circulation desks, and we've just reduced the footprint, so it's going to be smaller than the existing library, I'm not sure that that is like prudent. So I just want to make sure that we're really just like, I would love to just see some numbers before decisions are made. And I know we're in a rush to get this done, but I also am worried that we're cutting, like, that we're just like rushing the decisions before like we have all the information. So I just like, I feel like I just need some more information. And that's all I want to say. I don't want to come off as like I'm negative on all this. Like I get it and I understand that like we need to cut things. I just want to make sure that like, you know, maybe it is 1B with only 1 entrance instead of like, you know, or maybe we're not doing any hardscaping right now other than steps and a ramp to get in and out of 1 entrance. Because we can always go to the town in the future if we want to build a patio or put in some trees or, you know, whatever else that stuff is. So anyways, that's all I just wanted to say is I don't want to have to, like, I don't think that we as building committee members are making any decisions tonight. Like, I think that this was just presented to us, but I just worry that like the next step is that you guys are going to go, like, I don't know, I guess maybe you're not asking for our input. I'm not really even sure what's happening at this point, but I just would love a little bit more information before we are asked, if we are asked, in terms of what the next steps are. Because we did have a lot of input up until tonight. And tonight I feel like here's the design, and now this is what we're going out to bid. Whereas before we were really meticulously looking at every single decision in terms of layout and design that was being made. And now I feel like we're just not getting any input on that. So I feel like we should be allowed a little bit more input. That's all. Thanks.
So I just want to add a comment on the estimations. So we went out and hired yet another estimator. So the town's cost estimator is not the same estimator we used last fall. We hired yet a different one to get a 4th perspective on cost estimates. And I can't speak to the specifics of, you know, what Design Lab and they went through, but I have to pay every time we get an estimate done. So they can't give us an estimate on every iteration of this building, because then we're going to keep chipping away at the building costs. So I think certainly they can, you know, I would assume in the breakdown, it talks about the elevator and it talks about specific costs, but I don't believe they're going to have a cost on 1A, 1B, 1C, the separate buildings, just because I can't afford that. Because again, every time we do something like this, and we made the conscious decision to do another full cost estimate with another company, because I thought there was value in it to try and figure out what went wrong in the fall and how do we get a better estimate. So I don't know. So there's clearly a lot of detail. I just don't know to the level of each version of the building there will be that kind of estimate, just because we didn't go that route. And I also, I mean, I just want to say that even from our perspective, I mean, everybody's frustrated. You know, this is not the project that anybody wanted to see happen. But the solution of putting people back in this building, putting books in another location, just renovating the 70s edition, I just don't see that any of those are the right fit. I don't see that. I mean, again, the building is collapsing. The current building is falling apart. Every single day, more things happen over there. And the longer we wait, the more work that's going to have to be done. And, you know, hopefully we can get the roof can stay the same way, because if we have to replace more of the roof, then that's more money out of our budget. So while we're not rushing, we're rushing because every day we wait, the costs are going up, or the costs are changing, or the cost of materials is changing. I mean, you know, on a different level, we had a conversation today about just the cost to maintain the other buildings in town. We're pouring money into these buildings because we can't get people to maintain them. When we do, they don't have the parts that are necessary. They can't get steel, they can't get copper, they can't get this. And I'm just afraid that if we keep pushing this down the road and pushing this down the road, not saying that we shouldn't do our due diligence, that's not at all what I'm saying. But my fear is we're never gonna get this done. And this is the third or fourth time this project has come before the town, and the town has overwhelmingly supported it. So why would we miss the opportunity to use the money the town has said, here, we want you to fix this building, and do the best we can with the money that we have? So we're all frustrated, and again, this is not what anybody had in mind, but I still think at the end of the day, the finished product will be better than what we have today. So I just wanted to add that about the estimate and about that project, so.
Thank you. Andrew, you have your hand up.
Thanks. I appreciate the difficulty of the position that everybody's in. And, yeah, I agree with Kat about wanting to be transparent about decision making, because that's how you make good decisions, with good information. And totally agree with Denise and Lisa about, this is the result of neglect from generations, and postponing further is not the right thing to do for all the reasons that we're in this situation. I do want to better understand a little bit the schedule, because I understand the urgency. Things aren't going back, getting cheaper. Things are continuing to escalate. They're not escalating at quite the pace they were before. I also want to make sure that we've got time to give some input and look at it and understand and digest the information, even in between meetings, if information is shared, so that we can just make sure that in the last stab that we're making good decisions. What is the schedule and process for feedback and input between now and going to bid again? Yeah, I know it was mentioned earlier, but I just 6
Well,
weeks?
I guess, yeah, well, first, thank you. I mean, as with all, previous meetings, we will happily collect feedback. Obviously you're seeing this for the first time, and you all deserve time to think about it and compile thoughts to share them with us. So we're happy to collect that over the next week or two. If we need to schedule another interim workshop between now and the one we are anticipating on March 13th to review that feedback and react to it, we can do that. But we weren't anticipating that coming into this meeting, but if we need to do that, we can. We are expecting to get estimates back and reconciled by March 7th. That doesn't, the way the current schedule is laid out, that doesn't give us a ton of time to make any major adjustments between when we're intending to put the bids back out, or put the drawings back out for bid on the 22nd. But if that needs to shift, it can. But to Denise's point, we already added more escalation to the project because 4 or 5 months have passed, and we're just trying to get this back out on the street as soon as we can. But obviously, we don't want to shortchange any of you. So if we need to reevaluate this schedule, we can do that.
So is this an appropriate meeting to give some feedback so that you can
Absolutely
resolve? So I'm only on the exterior committee, so I want to talk about the planning. But I would like to look at the exterior again. Sorry, I was on my phone earlier and I couldn't quite see it. And now that I'm on a full-size monitor, I can perceive it a little better. A couple questions. Are the windows operable? Like they look like double hung windows?
They're not operable.
They're not operable. I think some of them are trying to replicate the proportion of the mullion, and I can see it on the west side a little bit. On the east side, it looks a little sad. I think like Soviet housing windows or something, and maybe even just eliminating that mullion, just make it look a little bit more elegant. I like the shift of the entrance and the streamlining of it to the south. I think that solves some planning problems. I think the relationship that it has to the entrance and the frontality of it is a good thing. I think the way that massing is distinguished from everything else is nice. I'm just, I know you're kind of iterating through things. It's something about the proportions of the windows in that front masonry thing just feels a little stark.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and
very severe. And maybe I'm not just repeating conversations you've already had internally, but
yeah.
I'd like to kind of get your thoughts on it.
Well, I think I don't think you're wrong. I think we need to evaluate all of this. I mean, this is, as we all know, this has been happening quickly. We just got
Yeah.
feedback last week from our cost estimator on like this is the direction that we need to go. So, you know, we haven't had a whole lot of time to iterate and develop these elevations, and you know, we've made some big shifts in terms of where we're accentuating a vertical relationship to the turret and swinging the entry around, to your point. But I think there's some nuance that we need to evaluate and study further that we just frankly haven't had time to do.
And then just last thing, you know, I've been kind of a proponent of, you know, distinguishing the material palette a little bit. And I know that the brick selection of neutral bricks is really tough to convey in print or in renderings or on screen, and that you know, we were talking about going through a selection process that could happen even after bidding, where you look at things together. I think that's going to be kind of important to the success of that front volume, and it could use more warmth. Well, I'm not going all the way and saying let's just make it red brick again. That's part of what's the geometry of it makes the palette seem less elegant. So I don't know if there's something to be
I
done
think
with
no, we hear you. I mean, we've lost slate on the roof, which I think
Yeah.
helped opposition a lot. And again, I'm not trying to make an excuse, but like we need more time to develop this, which
Sure.
is what we're intending to do. But losing that material and then losing that sort of form volumetrically on the top of the addition, as you know, it just needs further study.
Yeah. And one last question. There's a chimney element on the east side there of the existing building. What is that material there? The gray?
I think that's a sort of illustration oversight. I think that should be red brick.
Okay, so it's not a proposal. I think it's just hasn't been. Okay.
Yeah, we think that's just a rendering mistake. That should be a red brick.
Thanks.
Anyone else have their hand up that I can't see? Okay, then I guess it's my turn. When I started this job, there was an iteration of the building committee, and I said to my old boss, they want to build a new building, and my boss said to me, why would you want to do that? You don't want to do that. And now I know why I don't want to do that. This has been the biggest challenge of my career, and of course it's extremely frustrating. I agree with so many things that were said tonight. There were years and decades of neglect. I found the 2012 presentation to town meeting that said the 70s edition has to be replaced, and if it doesn't happen now, it'll have to happen eventually. Well, we're 12 years later and it's still there, and it's worse. There's leaks, there's black mold, there's asbestos in the walls, there's lead paint. And we lived there, the staff lived there, and now we've moved to temporary quarters and we're making it work because that's what we do. And at this point, the staff is the one giving me all the hope. They're positive and they're so great, and they help the patrons. Everyone comes in. When are you moving? Nothing's getting done. What are you going to do? It's a challenge. I get it. And I so appreciate all of you taking the time. It's been a challenge, and this is not what we want to build. It's just not. But what are we going to do? the longer we wait, in 2012, this cost $3 million. And now we're at 14. It's tragic. And I think that we need to give this town something. That's not the answer we want to hear, but what are we going to do? We can't put staff back in that building. We can't have the patrons keep wondering where all our books are. For temporary reasons, yes, it's working, but Pompo is not a solution to storing books. Even today, we had a woman come in who wanted to know when we were going to be able to browse again, because that was the joy that she found in the library. I don't know. I think that it's exhausting, and I think we just need to hold on and give this town a library, that it is a healthy library and it gives the spaces that we need. And the staff are all on board to do whatever we need to do to make this work once we're inside. And I guess that's all I have to say.
If I could chime in, I mean, we share your sentiments, Tina. We share your frustration, Kat. From a design professional perspective, the past 3 or 4 years, especially, no one could have predicted a global pandemic and its impact on the construction industry. But designing projects over the past 3 or 4 years with a construction industry that continues to be incredibly inflated has been immensely challenging from our perspective. You know, we never would have thought this project, when we started this project 3+ years ago, would have this type of price tag associated with it. But that's unfortunately the reality that the cards that we've been dealt, and we have to Tina's point, we have to make some sacrifices here in what we had hoped to achieve, and come up with the best path forward we can with the dollars that have been allocated to deliver this project. So I would sit here and, you know, this is, just like you said, this is not the project that we thought it was going to be 3 years ago. It's not. But we have to make some concessions and put our best foot forward. And I know that's hard to swallow. It's hard to swallow for us too. And it's frustrating. But that's what we're contending with. And we're doing our best with the expertise that we have, and the consultant team that we have, and the industry, and what we do have control of, to try to put forward the best possible solution for the town with the dollars that we have allocated for this project.
I'm going to jump in because I think Tina took a little break. So Kat, go ahead.
Awesome, thanks. So basically, I just want to, like, now that we have this timeline up front. So basically, what you're looking for from us tonight is to give you any feedback on the design as it stands. Is that correct? Because at this point, you guys are going to go and make some sort of drawings that then go to cost estimators.
Yes, that's correct. We're re-entering the construction document phase to finalize documents to, yes, go to the estimator for our last estimate, and then go out to bid to the market after that.
Okay. And when we went out to bid last time, you guys, like, it came in at over like $1,000 a square feet or something that was like surprising, but that was kind of what the industry, or what this project was. It's $1,200 a square foot or something like that. Is that correct?
In round numbers, yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So again, I'm just going to give like my feedback, and you can take it for what it is, but I am again just concerned with that 2 entrance way, where we're going to be losing more space towards lobby space, like kind of unusable entrance way space, because you're going in and out. And I don't know what the cost of putting in that big ramp is going to be, and all the steps in the front. But I feel like the cost savings for doing like an entrance.
Kat, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something I wanted to say. I'm open to that conversation about the second entrance. However, there's 2 things. One, the entrance will have to be on the first floor because of our deliveries and where the circ desk is and all of those logistics. That's great. However, if we don't do the second entrance, then we lose $1 million at this moment from the
Right,
CP.
but I'm not sure that's true. Like that keeps being said, but have we researched, like, have we gone to CPC and said like, look, it's gonna cost us over $1 million just to do the exterior building envelope to get this building up to code? Like,
Well, that's true. It would have to be on the for work on the historic building.
correct.
And you're right, we haven't looked into that. I'm just saying that it can't be put toward anything that is related to the new addition. That's all.
Right. But what I was just told by Ben and by Andrew and Audrey is that renovating that building is going to cost $6 million. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think it's worth approaching the town, like the CPC people, and saying, look, we thought we were going to be opening this entrance up, but given the fact that this project came in $2 million more than we expected it to, we're reevaluating that plan, and we can actually save $1 million for the town and keep, the building. We can, but we can keep the historic renovations. We're going to do X, Y, and Z to the historic building. Like that, again, I just don't understand why that hasn't been done. And I just want to make sure that we're like dotting our I's and crossing our T's on that in terms of like really utilizing the space and the money towards what we want it to be used for. Like, are you going to have the staff there in the library going forward to man 2 circ desks, for the open hours of the library? I just want to make sure that, again, we're just like doing the due diligence on that, because if it were up to me, I would rather keep it as a beautiful window as it is now and increase the programming space, or, get back a larger community room to be able to use for programs for the entire town, so that other, community groups can come in and larger community groups can come in and use. So that, like, if it was my $1 million to spend, I wouldn't spend it on a staircase outside, because again, if we want to do that in the future, then maybe, maybe 10 years from now, we go to the CPC and we say like, this was a really cool idea, and now the building is all set up for it. Can we do this project, and it will cost $1 million of CPC funds, and do that in the future? I guess what I'm saying is like, I just want to really emphasize building size, building envelope, et cetera, like things we cannot change going forward as easily as exterior work. And I know that there's a big cost that I wish I knew how much it was, but I feel like, if I have $1 million to spend, I'd rather spend $1 million on a bigger structure for the library in terms of being able to have a larger community space or a larger children's space, and have more space within the building, because again, entranceways, they're great because you get in and out and they can be a beautiful space, but they're not like necessarily usable because you can't like set up a program in front of the front door. So that's all I'm saying. I just want to make sure we're doing all of that. And I feel like that comment has really been ignored by me for many, many months. So I just really want to make sure that we're getting that feedback to me before, or to everybody. But for some reason I'm harping on it, but it's because I haven't really gotten an answer yet. Thank you.
I could jump in here. I mean, we did seriously look at even just specifically that front door.
Yeah.
Very early on. And of course, the CPC funding came up, but it's also required that we have a second entrance on that floor, not an entrance, to have an exit door. And if we were to simplify the exterior, they would have to be in emergency exit door alone. You could not use that door for anything except emergencies, similar to how that side door is used right now. So, and that's, that kind of restudy happens on a lot of elements, if not all elements and program of this building, where we, in a lot of it, we landed on what we had previously landed on before. And that's not out of bias of design, but it's out of the kind of research and study that went into it over the last many years, the last 3 years really. And so that's how we landed on sticking with the MIST system, because after researching everything, we ultimately determined that that was the best solution. Same thing with the front door. Same thing with the number of restrooms, the children's collection. Like there were things that we were able to remove, like the ramp, but there are other things that we, after doing it all twice, we determined is the best thing possible for the project and necessary for the project. So it's hard to go into every single thing that we kind of discussed internally and met with our consultants about, and the cost estimators and the code consultants. But ultimately, it's what is required at the minimum or necessary for the kind of integrity of the projects. And that's how we landed at where we're at right now.
I mean, but so again, like you have a second egress in this diagram that you're showing me, right? Like you've got a program room with the exit that's there now, like it's already existing in like we have it already.
If there were no entrance on the front, that would be the only egress. So we are required to have an additional egress out of this space, out of this floor. So we would need another door on this floor, and that is the only location for a door at grade.
Gotcha. So you have to have 2 exits for every level of building?
It's slightly more complicated than that. It's due to the occupancy requirements of the spaces. So there's more that goes into it. There's distances from corner to corner, corner to door, furniture calculations. There's all stuff like that. And ultimately, to keep it short, it's required to have an additional door on this level and 2 on the lower level as well.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I guess I have a question. Sorry, I know that you guys are killing me here. Sorry. So what do other buildings that have 2 levels and you can't like get out on the second level? What do they do? Like if you're in a library that has 2 levels.
They have a 2-hour rated enclosure around their stair and rated hallways most likely to that staircase and to the exterior.
So there is a workaround to have only 1 door if you're doing other things to the building.
Yes, but it's not a cost-effective solution.
It's just hard because again, you're looking at 600 square feet right there, right? Like that historic lobby could be something else. And that circulation could be something else where you're, having more space for other things. But I know I'm in the minority here apparently on the phone, on the line, but okay, thank you for answering all those questions.
Okay, anyone else on the building committees that would like to say anything? Because we're gonna have to move on. Okay. So, next, Matt can speak to his report.
Can I interrupt though for a
Yep.
minute, Tina? So
Yep.
to circle back to some of the questions, and this is more for the design lab folks. Would it be possible to have a meeting, say 2 weeks from tonight, to provide some of the specifics on the cost estimation before, with the sort of iterations that you're talking about with some additional design before we go to that next step so that the building committee can have a little more input on sort of the specifics? Is that doable? If you guys are speaking, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, I think that's doable. We'll have to talk about it internally. It's school vacation week, but we can figure something out to find the date that works for everybody.
So the next tentative meeting you had was the 13th, correct, of March?
Correct.
Yeah, so I think if we could find a date in between now and then, so that you could go over sort of the estimates and Kat can see the specifics, and everybody, but I know Kat has specific questions, to sort of go over some of that before you have the final drawings to go to the estimator, I think would be very helpful.
Yeah, there's 5 weeks between now and the 13th too, so if that helps.
Yeah. I think the week of the 26th would be better bet on our end, but we can figure that out between us and you and the building committee to find a date that works for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Okay, Matt.
Just pulling up a screen share real quick to put that up on the screen.
Thank you.
Right, looks like it is up. Can folks see this?
Yes.
A monthly report. Okay, so I'll start with a quick progress summary. So this is from the past month, January. And you know, the design lab team has already gone into quite a bit of detail about their design activities over the past month. One key item that we focused on was you know, engaging with another cost estimator. We retained PM&C to as Denise said, to come in and view the project with a fresh set of eyes. And leading up to, at the very end of January last week, meeting with the design lab team, estimator, Fennessy, PM&C, and with, you know, Denise and Tina, and starting to have an informal discussion around the project, helping the design lab team to understand and lead them to the path that they identified in their presentation tonight. But it's been so working with the schemes, working to understand cost data in as much detail as possible leading up to this meeting. So that was the bulk of the past month. Coming into the month of February, this brings us to today, which is workshop number 10. Continuing to check in, you know, with Denise and Tina, and to address issues as they have come up. And what we're forecasting then is, you know, based on what we were just discussing, this may slide a little bit in order to allow for the opportunity for the building committee to engage with the estimating detail at a higher level. But what we're working towards is a 75% construction document estimate and a reconciliation meeting with the design team and the two estimators to try to develop a number, you know, working with the data points provided by those individual estimators, and to provide a number that we can have a higher degree of confidence in. So that was sort of summed up here in item number 3 down here, which addresses that effort. So that's sort of a high-level summary of where we've been and what's ahead. You know, aligns with what's the schedule information that Design Labs just presented. Looking at the schedule of that, this is a milestone version of the sort of bar chart that was just presented. What that leads us to, if folks are looking at the timeline that we were just shared, would be cut right to the chase. A rebid based on that schedule would land us having the documents, getting a price from contractors in late April, soup to nuts, for a general contract. So that's sort of what the target is based on what you have just seen, subject to change to the extent that it needs to be adjusted to allow folks more time to engage with the estimating data and start the construction documents phase effort that Ben was describing. So the schedule, again, this milestone schedule here is built on that timeline. And in summary, we're targeting the end of April to have the documents rebid based on that timeline. The other piece of this is you're looking at some of these subsequent phases are dependent on a successful bid, but this has all been adjusted and would be subject to an approved construction schedule from an awarded general contractor. So there's not really much more detail that we could provide about these at that point. So I guess I'll stop there for a second. Any questions on what I've just presented before I talk about the big picture in terms of budget?
I don't see any questions.
Okay. I'll give a high-level summary about budget. So the financial status report includes what we had been carrying for the hard construction cost based on the estimate we had been using. So this is the number that we're primarily sort of working to reduce with some of the value management and redesign effort here, with the effort of getting the overall project back on budget. Other aspects of this really have not changed. The only updates are essentially to invoicing for the design team and some of the specialist consultants. We had additional hazmat work, for instance, that was completed by EFI, trying to inform the bid documents with a higher level of certainty related to some of the abatement measures we might need, as well as we will be seeing, I think, anticipate during the next reporting period, an invoice from PM&C for their assistance in gathering additional data about the estimates, and their review during the reconciliation effort that will follow on the 75% CD set. I don't think there was any further adjustments beyond encumbering invoices that were approved and paid to Wakefield for the relocation. I think this may have appeared in the last one, I'm not sure. But that will round out any of the changes to this since the last time that I presented budget. Any questions?
I don't see any, Matt.
Okay, I will stop sharing.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't believe we had any invoices to review, correct? Right, okay. So then we can approve the minutes from the January meeting.
I move to approve the minutes for the January meeting.
Thank you, Kat. Do I have a second?
Well, I'm the only one who can unmute, so second.
Oh, that's true.
I was trying to pull them up but yes, I'm a second.
Okay. I do roll call now.
So if people can raise their virtual hand, I think
Thank
that, and
you.
then you could declare it
be great.
unanimous if it is.
Sunny, Aisha, Frank, Melissa, Kat. Richard and Andrew. Yay, thank you. Yeah, it's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
I always forget this part. All in favor? Yes. Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Don't hate me, Denise.
I don't hate you, Kat.
Cantina.